Chapter 645, Calming Method. Following the complete disappearance of the surrounding astral glow, Katlia lowered her head and said to Frank Lee, who was slowly recovering, "Let them calm down." She was referring to the sailors, who were still struggling in pain. Just as she said that, Katlia shrunk her body back as the windows closed. At that instant, Klein vaguely saw a green vine grow upwards, covering the Admiral of Stars in layers. As he didn't sense any danger or wickedness, he intuitively believed that it was a method in mysticism, which Ma'am Hermit used to treat her injuries and recover her energy. A power of her Beyonder pathway, or is it from some mystical item she possesses? She began treatment without any worry and allowed Frank to deal with the chaos on the ship. She's not afraid that the death announcer would be able to chase up to us. How far did the future fly in that last pounce? Klein no longer held his neck up as he turned to look at Frank Lee. This first mate, who was both a poison expert and a capable doctor, had already retrieved a coiled soft tube from the pocket of his dungarees. It was connected to a small glass bottle, and on the other side was an embedded thin and sharp needle. "A sedative I concocted," Frank Lee said with a forced smile while still having pangs of fear. "I've bought something similar before. They were all given to Zombie Merrick." Klein surveyed the area and said, "This might not be enough." "No, it's not for them. I need a helper. They will receive the help of beer, which comes with a sedative effect. Haha, they're often rowdy once they're drunk, so I've added the necessary elements in most of the alcohol buckets," Frank explained in passing. Spiking their drinks without any notice. Klein nearly twitched the corner of his mouth. At that moment, he had a deep appreciation for the aptness of the nickname Poison Expert. Simply because he found the pirates rowdy when drunk, Frank had added a modified sedative to most of the alcoholic beverages without any sense of guilt or shame. It was as though he was doing something very ordinary. This fellow is a really straight and warm person in certain aspects, but in other aspects, he's more terrifying than a devil. This is because he doesn't believe that what he does is evil. How did the Church of Earth Mother produce such a crazy scientist? Klein controlled his expression and followed Frank Lee from a distance, and found the bosun, Nina, who was squirming in the shadows of the bulkhead. This pirate with an exaggerated figure was slumped there, writhing in pain. She kept scratching the deck, producing ear-piercing sounds as bloody marks were left behind. Just watching the scene made Klein feel pain in his fingers. "Jayaman, help me press her down to prevent her from struggling." Frank raised the needle and tube in his hand. Klein didn't object to it, but he didn't say a word. He calmly crouched by the side and pressed down on Nina's shoulders. He felt his hands slip the moment he touched her, finding it difficult to grab her. It was as though she wasn't a lady, but a gigantic fish covered in slippery scales. Klein instantly corrected his actions. Using a clown's precise control, he grabbed Nina firmly by the shoulders. However, Nina's struggling was surprisingly strong, far greater than Klein's. Soon, he felt his fingers turn sore as he could hardly continue. As expected of a sequence 7 Beyonder from the sailor pathway, while I'm not a Beyonder who excels when it comes to physical strength. If not for the need to feed it, I can activate creeping hunger and switch to steal Mavetti's soul and use the strength of a zombie as a most suitable response. As these thoughts ran through his mind, Klein saw Frank approach, crouch down, and press his knee onto Nina's back. His muscles bulged as he quickly stopped Nina's struggling. A Beyonder from the planter pathway has quite a lot of physical strength as well. However, Mr. Frank Lee, it's probably difficult for you to get a girlfriend if you use such crude manners against a lady. Of course, you definitely don't mind. You could totally let your child grow from the soil. Klein lampooned as he watched Frank Lee inject the needle into the back of Nina's hand. As the small bottle of sedatives was injected, Nina stopped her attempts at struggling. Klein released his hands and stood up. After a few seconds, Nina combed her hair and rolled to her feet. She grumbled at Frank Lee, "Why must you always be so rough like a bear? Can't you try a different method?" As she spoke, she stretched her arms without concealing the pained expression on her face. Unlike the dive from earlier, she was now wearing a linen shirt and a brown coat. She looked no different from an ordinary pirate. Frank wasn't fazed by Nina's complaints as he asked in puzzlement, "How was I rough?" "All right, let's not argue on this topic. Let's help them first. Get the beer barrel out. Let's work together to make them drink. Jamin, you don't mind participating in this, right?" Klein shot a glance at the sailors on the deck. After contemplating for a few seconds, he asked, "The goal is to let them calm down." "That's right," Frank Lee nodded heavily. "Can I just knock them unconscious?" Klein asked calmly. "This has almost the same effects as a sedative beer, and it's more efficient." He added inwardly. Nina turned her head in surprise and was momentarily stunned speechless. Frank Lee thought seriously for a moment. "Okay. All right." Klein walked to a cutlass he had long noticed, picked it up, and used the dull edge to strike it at its owner. Bang! Through his precise control, the pirate who was rolling in pain calmed down and fell unconscious. Nina's expression froze for a second before she recovered. She then slowed down when passing by Klein. She suppressed her laughter as she said, "I've heard rumors of you, but I never expected you to be more exaggerated than the rumors. Usually, it should be the opposite." "Yes, your thoughts are very, very special, completely different from others, and they're closer to those of Frank's. This is probably why he's able to treat you as a friend in such a short time. No, there are differences among lunatics. Jamin Sparrow hasn't reached the level of Frank yet." Klein observed silently and gave such a reply inwardly. He ignored Nina and held the cutlass and walked across the deck, knocking the sailors unconscious and waiting for them to wake up naturally. Frank wished to do the same, but he gave up his rash thoughts when he was asked by Nina if he could guarantee that he only knocked them unconscious instead of killing them. He entered the cabin and brought out a beer barrel and acted according to his original plan. Bam, bam, bam. Klein struck as he walked all the way to the bow. At this moment, an elder in his 50s with a pointed bonnet had gradually come round. When he saw the cold and crazy adventurer approach, he hurriedly tried to stand up and blurted out, "No, I don't need it. I'm already fine, I'm fine. There's no need to explain, it's very clear." Klein held back his amusement and turned for the bow. At this moment, the elder introduced himself. "I'm the navigator of the future, Ottolov." "Navigator." Klein turned his head and discovered several books dropped around Ottolov. They were either spread on the ground face up or down, flat or sideways. "Haha, I fell from above and brought them with me. They nearly went mad," Ottolov explained. Klein shifted his gaze towards his eyes and discovered the colors of the deep sea in his blue eyes. "It's not the pair of eyes that were observing me in the day, but this feeling is somewhat similar to the Admiral of Stars. They are of the same pathway." Klein retracted his gaze and watched Nina and Frank calm the other sailors. Just as he was about to look back to see if the death announcer had continued its pursuit, Ottolov suddenly shouted, "Be careful." Whoosh! A huge wave struck the bow, causing the future to shake vigorously. If not for his balancing ability as a clown, Klein would have fallen like Frank. And when the huge spray pattered down like rain, it drenched his half-top hat and double-breasted frock coat. There should be a steam iron here, right? The act of a crazy adventurer washing his clothes doesn't violate his persona. It's weird if he doesn't wash his clothes. I should have worn clothes in the style of the Rorsted Archipelago natives. At that instant, Klein felt a series of heartache. He saw a storm ahead with huge waves coming one after another as they surged high up like mountains. He could sense the crazy winds and the rumbling thunder. We've come to the boundaries of the safe sea routes. The flight from just now might have allowed us to lose the death announcer's tail, but it has also diverted the ship from its path. Klein watched as Ottolov, Nina, and Frank, as well as bloodless Heathdoyle, who had appeared at some point in time, wake up the sailors as they took their places. They frantically and busily began to steer the future. Through their hard work, the future changed directions in time and tore through the gigantic waves, and dodged the bolts of lightning before returning to the safe sea route. After everything calmed down, Klein released the charm from the sea god domain and breathed a sigh of relief. Looking back, he saw no signs of the death announcer's pursuit. He finally eased up and found that there was nothing calm about the night. After surveying the area and seeing the pirates rub their heads or gasp for breath, looking exhausted and on the brink of collapse, Klein left the deck, feeling a slight guilty conscience. He walked to the cabin and sighed inwardly. We just left the Garga's archipelago recently, and the ship was nearly destroyed. The search for mermaids really doesn't seem simple. Following the staircase to the upper level, Klein walked past the captain's cabin and slowed down. He observed for a moment and saw green leaves covering the crack in the door. Everything was isolated. He shifted his gaze and returned to his room. He considered the matter of praying to the Fool before going above the gray fog to grasp the nearby waters and search for traces of the death announcer by responding. He wanted to let the King of Immortality, Agalito, who attacked others for no baffling reason, to experience the same treatment as he did. No, there are eyes watching. I should try my best not to do such things. Besides, it will only teach the King of Immortality a lesson and not seriously injure him. It's not worth the risk. I shouldn't let my anger get the better of my rationality. I'll think about it again after advancing successfully. Klein repressed his urge.